You replay the situation in your head. ADDING, some new DTLS each time. Reminding yourself how wrong it is, how unfair it is, how tired you are of it. And yet nothing changes, not because it can't change, but because you haven't stopped allowing it. Here's the truth most people don't want to admit. You can't complain about what you allow. If you keep tolerating it, you're agreeing to it, maybe not out loud, maybe not in words, but in action. In inaction, in silence. And silence is agreement to the pattern. The same way you can't blame the weeds. If you never pull them, you can't blame a problem. You continually give permission to exist. Allowing doesn't always look like approval. Sometimes it looks like avoiding the conversation. Sometimes it looks like laughing it off. Sometimes it looks like telling yourself it's not that bad, when you know it is. But here's the thing. Every time you minimize it, every time you sidestep it, every time you choose the path of least resistance, you reinforce it, you make it stronger. You teach it that it has a permanent place in your life. The real cost of allowing isn't just the thing itself. It's what it takes from you over time. The way it chips at your confidence. The way it slowly lowers your standards. The way it convinces you that maybe this is all you can have, all you can expect, and the longer you allow it, the harder it becomes to imagine anything different. Not because better doesn't exist, but because you've forgotten what better feels like. This isn't about blame, it's about power. The moment you stop allowing what you don't want is the moment you take control back. Not over other people, not over every situation, but over yourself. Over what you say yes to, over what you open the door to, over what you give your time, energy, and attention to, because those three things are the currency of your life. And you can't keep spending them on something you claim you don't want. So this is where we start. Not with complaining, not with wishing, but with deciding. Deciding what is no longer welcome. Deciding where the line is. Deciding that your standards will no longer be negotiable. 'Cause the moment you stop allowing it, you stop living at the mercy of it. And when that happens, the complaint ends. Because the problem can't survive without your permission. The cost of tolerance is never paid all at once. It's paid slowly, quietly, and often without you even realizing it. It shows up in the way you feel drained at the end of the day, even if nothing big happened. It shows up in the quiet resentment that builds while you keep telling yourself it's fine. It shows up in the way you start lowering your expectations, not because you want to, but because living with less than you deserve starts to feel normal. Every time you allow something that goes against your values, your goals, or your well-being, you're teaching yourself and everyone around you what your standards really are. Not the ONES you talk about, the ONES you live by, because no matter what you say, your actions show the truth. If you allow someone to consistently disrespect your time, your communicating that your time worth protecting. If you allow a habit to keep stealing your focus, your communicating that your focus isn't worth defending. The damage isn't always visible right away. In fact, that's why it's so dangerous. You tell yourself it's just this one time. Just for now, just until things get easier. But just this once is how patterns begin. And once something becomes a pattern, it gets harder to remove before you know it. You've built an environment where the very thing you complain about is a permanent fixture in your life. This happens in RELATIONSHIPS all the time. You a small red flag. Because you don't want conflict. You downplay how something made you feel. Because you don't want to seem too sensitive. And slowly, those little allowances grow into bigger problems. Until one day you wake up. And the behavior you swore you'd never accept is just another Tuesday. It happens at work. You take on extra RESPONSIBILITIES without fair compensation. Because it's temporary. You let DADLINES get pushed onto your plate. Last minute because you don't want to say no. And hurt somebody's feelings. So you gotta stop doing that, and here's WHY. Before long it's not temporary anymore. It's expected, and the unspoken rule, BCOMES. You'll take it and you won't push back. It even happens with yourself. You let one bad habit slide. Because you've had a long day. Then another. And soon enough, the standard you had for yourself is gone. Not because you made a decision to lower it, but because you allowed small EXCPTIONS until the old standard wasn't your normal. The real cost of tolerance isn't just the frustration. It's the erosion of your own self-respect. Every time you allow something that shouldn't be, ALLOWED, you send yourself a subtle message. I guess I can live with this. And once you believe you can live with less, you start to expect less from others, from life, from yourself. The truth is you complain about a reality you've repeatedly agreed to. You may not like it, but if you've been allowing it, you've been helping to keep it alive. The cost isn't just paid in comfort. It's paid in time, energy, and opportunity. And those are things you can't get back. The first step to RASING your standards is RECOGNIZING the quiet, hidden cost of letting them slip in the first place. Once you see the price you've been paying, you'll start to question if it's worth it. And that's where change begins. Not in the moment of frustration, but in the moment you decide the cost is no longer acceptable. We often allow what we shouldn't because in the moment it feels easier than the alternative. Confrontation is uncomfortable. Change is uncertain. Loss is painful. So instead of facing those things head on, we compromise. We tell ourselves we're keeping the peace. But really, we're trading long-term peace for short-term comfort. And the problem with that trade is that the comfort is temporary, but the CONSEQUENCES are not. Fear is one of the biggest RESONS. We tolerate what we shouldn't. Fear of the fallout if we speak up. Fear of how others will react. Fear of being seen as difficult or selfish. Fear of losing a relationship, a job, or a sense of belonging. That fear convinces us that it's safer to stay quiet, to stay put, to stay agreeable. But silence doesn't protect you. It protects the problem. And the more you protect the problem, the more it grows. Then there's comfort, not the kind that feels good, but the kind that feels familiar. Even a bad situation can feel safe if it's predictable. Your mind knows what to expect. And when the mind knows what to expect, it will cling to it even if it's miserable. Because the unknown feels riskier. We start telling ourselves, better the devil you know. As if familiarity is a valid reason to settle for less than we deserve. It's like we lie to ourselves to make it easier. To keep TOLERATNG, it's not that bad. They didn't mean it, this is just temporary. Sometimes we even convince ourselves that things will change on their own if we just hang in THERE long enough. But deep down we know this. What you don't address you endorse. HOPING, it will fix itself. is just another form of allowing. And allowing is permission. Avoidance plays a huge role. It feels easier not to have the hard conversation, not to make the bold move, not to draw the line. But avoidance is a short-term strategy that creates long-term problems. Every time you avoid taking action, you're not just avoiding discomfort, you're delaying resolution. And while you wait the thing you don't want, gets more comfortable in your life. And here's the truth most people overlook. Not deciding is still a decision. Choosing not to act is a choice. And it always favors the problem. Because if you don't actively remove what's hurting you, you're actively making space for it to stay. You might not mean to, but your lack of action is the green light. It's waiting for. When you understand why you've been allowing something, you take away some of its control. You stop believing the excuses. You start to see the fear for what it is. A barrier you've been holding up yourself. And once you see it, you can start lowering it. You can begin making decisions that protect you, instead of protect the problem. Awareness of the why is what gives you the strength for the how. Because once you understand that fear, comfort, lies and avoidance are the reasons you've been stuck, you can stop accepting them as valid. And the moment you stop accepting them, you stop allowing the problem to live rent-free in your life. Boundaries are how you teach the world how to treat you. They are not walls to keep people out. They're guidelines that protect your time, your energy, your peace, and your self-respect. Without boundaries, you're leaving everything about your life open to chance. And when life is left to chance, it's almost guaranteed you'll end up allowing things you don't actually want. A boundary is simply this: a clear line between what's acceptable to you and what isn't. The problem is, most people don't set those lines clearly. They assume others will just know. But people don't read minds. They read behavior. If you don't state your boundaries and live by them, others will make up their own rules about how to treat you, and often those rules will favor their comfort over your well-being. The first step is identifying where you've been allowing too much. Look for the areas that consistently leave you drained, resentful, or frustrated. Those feelings are signals. They're your mind and body telling you this crosses the line. Whether it's a friend who always takes without giving, a boss who constantly oversteps, or a habit of your own that keeps stealing your time. If it costs you your peace, it's a place that needs a boundary. Once you see where the lines are missing, you decide where to draw them. And here's the key: boundaries are about clarity, not aggression. You don't need to over-explain. You don't need to apologize for protecting yourself. A boundary isn't an attack. It's a statement. This works for me, this doesn't. That's it. The simpler the better. And when you communicate them, do it without guilt. You're not being selfish. You're being responsible for yourself and for your life. Because here's the truth: if you don't protect your energy, your time, your space, no one else will. People will take as much as you let them. That's human nature, which means it's your job to decide what you're available for and what you're not. The power of a boundary is inconsistency. You enforce it once and then abandon it. The moment it's tested, it will be tested. Every boundary is, but every time you hold the line, you reinforce it. You teach others how to engage with you. You teach yourself that your standards matter. And the more you practice, the easier it becomes. Remember, boundaries aren't about control. You can't control other people. You can only control your own participation. A boundary says, if this happens, here's what I will do, not here's what you must do. It's you taking responsibility for you. And that's what makes them powerful. You're not relying on someone else to change. You're deciding how you'll respond if they don't. When you start setting and respecting your own boundaries, something shifts. You stop feeling powerless. You stop being resentful. Because you're no longer waiting for others to value you, you're valuing yourself first. And that's the kind of standard that makes it impossible to keep. Allowing what you used to tolerate. A boundary that's never enforced is just a suggestion. And suggestions don't change your life. They get ignored. Setting the standard is only half the work. Holding it is where the real transformation happens. Because the moment you make it clear what you will and allow, you can expect the test to come. It might come from the same people, the same situations, or even from yourself. And when it does, what you do next will determine whether your standard becomes permanent or just another temporary line in the sand. The first thing to understand is that pushback is normal. People, situations, and even habits have gotten used to you being a certain way. The moment you shift, it disrupts that balance, and anything that feels disrupted will try to return to normal. That's why it's so tempting to give in. The moment you get resistance, guilt, pressure, anger, or even subtle manipulation, it's easier to back down than to stand firm. But here's the truth: every time you stand firm, you make the new standard stronger. Every time you give in, you make the old pattern stronger. Enforcing a boundary is not about controlling others. It's about controlling yourself. You can't make someone respect your time, but you can decide not to give it away freely. You can't make someone speak to you respectfully, but you can decide to end a conversation that crosses the line. You can't make a workplace change its culture, but you can decide how long you're willing to stay in it. Enforcement is about your action, not their reaction. The key is consistency. If your boundary is no last-minute work, requests after 6 p.m., then it's no every time, not no on Monday, but yes on Thursday because you felt bad. If your boundary is, I don't tolerate being spoken to disrespectfully, then it's stepping away every time, not just when you're in the mood to enforce it. Inconsistency sends a mixed message. It tells people the boundary is negotiable. And if it's negotiable, it's not really a boundary. Enforcement will be uncomfortable at first, especially when it involves people you care about. You might feel guilty. You might be afraid of the reaction. That's normal. But discomfort is the price of self-respect. Every time you choose the discomfort of holding the line over the comfort of letting it slide, you strengthen both the boundary and your own self-worth. And here's something important. Enforcement isn't about being aggressive or confrontational. You don't need to raise your voice, argue, or explain yourself into the ground. The more you explain, the more it sounds like you're asking for PRMSSI. On. A boundary isn't a debate. It's a decision. State it clearly. ACT on IT consistently. Let your actions do most of the talking. There will be times when enforcing a standard cost you something, an opportunity, a relationship, a level of comfort you've gotten used to. But if keeping it means bettering your own standard, It's not worth having. The short-term loss is nothing compared to the long-term damage of repeatedly bettering yourself. Every time you enforce a standard, you teach the world how to treat you, and you remind yourself what you will and will not accept. Over time, this becomes second nature. You stop having to defend your boundaries because the people and situations that refuse to respect them naturally fade out of your life. And what's left are the ones that fit who you are and where you're going. This is the moment you stop sending mixed signals. The moment you stop giving your power away. The moment you make your standards more than just words. Because the life you want is built on the standards you're willing to enforce, not just the ones you're willing to set. Living without the complaint isn't about pretending everything is perfect. It's about removing the things you used to tolerate, so you no longer have to keep bringing them up. When you stop allowing what drains you, frustratsu or disrespectsu, the constant mental loop of, I can't believe this is happening, disappears. And when that loop is gone, you get something priceless back, your energy. You'd be surprised how much mental space a single, recurring complaint can take up. The overthinking, the venting, the silent resentment, all of it eats away at focus, creativity, and peace. But once you cut off the source, once you either change the situation or remove yourself from it, that mental space becomes available again. And you can use it for something better, building, creating, enjoying living. And this is where your identity shifts from victim mode to ownership mode. When you're in victim mode, life feels like it's happening to you. You see the problem, but you tell yourself there's nothing you can do. Ownership mode flips that. You see the problem, you address it, and you stop giving it space in your life. You take full responsibility for what you allow. And as a result, your life starts to reflect your choices, not your complaints. And here's the beautiful part. When you live by your standards, you naturally attract people, opportunities, and situations that match them. The ones who can't respect your boundaries fade out, and the ones who can stay and thrive alongside you. Your standards act like a filter, removing what doesn't fit and making space for what does. And the best part, you no longer have to fight for respect. It becomes the default. Of course, you have to stay vigilant. Old habits and old allowances have a way of trying to creep back in. Sometimes they disguise themselves as just this once. Sometimes they show up in new forms, but with the same effect. That's why self-check-ins are so important. Ask yourself regularly, am I living by my standards? Or am I slipping back into allowing what I said? I wouldn't. That awareness keeps you in control. Living without the complaint isn't about perfection. It's about alignment. It's about making sure your life matches the things you say you want and refusing to keep what doesn't. It's about learning to replace complaining with action and frustration with decision. When something doesn't work for you, you address it, and once it's addressed, you move on, no lingering, no dragging it around for months or years. The more you live like this, the lighter you feel. Not because life suddenly becomes easy, but because you've removed the weight you were carrying. Voluntarily, you've stopped feeding the things that feed on your peace. And in that space, better things can grow. The truth is life will always present challenges. But you have the power to decide which ONES you keep. And when you stop allowing the ONES you don't want, you stop needing to complain about them. That's when you're truly free. You can't complain about what you allow. And by now that truth should be clear. The life you're living right now isn't just the result of what you've gone after. It's the result of what you've tolerated. You might not be able to control every situation, but you always have control over your participation. And every time you choose to allow something, you're making a silent agreement to live with it. This isn't about blame, it's about responsibility. When you take ownership of what you allow, you take ownership of your life. You stop handing power to other people, to circumstances, to old patterns. You stop waiting for something to magically change on its own. You stop rehearsing the same complaint over and over, and you start doing something about it. It's not enough to talk about what bothers you. You have to decide it's no longer welcome. Set the boundary, enforce the standard. Remove what doesn't align with the life you want. And then protect that decision, like your future depends on it. Because it does. Every standard you enforce is a brick in the foundation of a better life. Every allowance you refuse to make is a door you close to the wrong things and the wrong people. The moment you stop allowing it is the moment you stop living at the mercy of it. That's when the complaint ends. Not because the world suddenly got easier, but because you refuse to keep feeding the problem with your permission. So here's the challenge. Look at every recurring complaint in your life and ask yourself, have I been allowing this? If the answer is yes, then you already know what to do. Stop allowing it, stop giving it space. Stop letting it take up the time, energy, and peace that could be spent on something that actually moves your life forward. You can't complain about what you allow. But the moment you decide you won't allow it anymore, that's the moment you get your power back. That's the moment you stop living in reaction to the problem and start living in alignment with the solution.